Well, today I have the opportunity to sit down and talk with a longtime friend of mine, Colonel E. Ray Moore, who is the founder of Exodus Mandate. Brother Moore and I have been friends for about 30 years. We go back a little ways, and he's one of the great allies in the Christian education movement. He is a guy that I kind of consider to be one of the thought leaders within our movement, and a guy that a lot of us look to for direction and wisdom regarding these issues of how we should educate our children. And we had a couple of things we wanted to talk about today, one of which is a film that has just come out that is going to be talking about the issue of education. And it is called Educated for Liberty. And we're going to discuss that film. And then we're also going to be talking about some homeschool legislation that has been encroaching in various states. And so I think we'll lead out, Brother Ray, with the film and let you talk about that. And then we'll transition into talking about the legislation. Give me some background as to why the need for this film. And let me say this first, that, years ago, you and I were part of an older film called Indoctrination, Public Schools and the Decline of Christianity in America. For those of our viewers or listeners who aren't familiar with that, I would encourage them to go back and find that film and watch it. Great film. But what is different about this film, and why do we feel like it's important for right now where we are?
Well, it's very similar, and some of the same people are involved. The movie Indoctrination, I was the executive producer of that, and which means that I put up a lot of the money, and I was interviewed in it, and it was basically the theme that Exodus Mandate has, but it essentially appealed mostly to the homeschool movement at the time, which is a good thing. And it didn't look so much at private Christian schools. And I have to say I favor homeschooling, but we know some will not be able to do that or won't, but they might put their kids in a Christ-centered Bible-based private campus Christian school. But anyway, that movie came out, it's been about 15 years, and it had tremendous impact at the time. And people can look it up. We do have some in the office. We don't get many requests for it now, but it's called Indoctrination. And I guess the webpage is indoctrination.com. And I think you were part of it. I was part of it. We're guessing 3 to 5 million views, mostly at homeschool conventions where we showed it in large numbers. Now the new movie has just come out and it's called Educated for Liberty. And this is a hard copy of it, but I want to tell you it's right now available free online. And I hope your audience will write that down. The title is Educated for Liberty.com. And you can go there right now and click on that and view it free. It's been out maybe 2.5 months now, so it's really new. A lot of people don't know about it. I served as a consultant and helped them set up the arguments. I'm not a movie producer, but I help people who are. And it was done by the Providence Foundation, and they're also a member of, and the CEO and president of that is Stephen McDowell, and he actually wrote the script. And then Dale Robinson from Richmond, Virginia, is a movie producer. He actually did the movie, and so we're really excited about this, and we're praying and hoping for 10 million views in a year. And that's a lot, but we've got a lot of organizations, working for it, and as you are, and we're going to talk about it today.
Yeah. So, who are some of the voices that we can expect to hear from Christian education advocates, or those liberty-minded advocates that we can expect to hear from in the film?
Well, Lee Bortons, who is the CEO, founder, I guess, of classical conversations. I think her son Robert is now taken over as president and CEO. David Barton with Wall Builders. Um, Dr. Carol Swain, she uh, taught at Vanderbilt for a time. Michael Farris, who is the founding president of the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and yours truly, E. Ray Moore. Um, there are others. Alex Newman speaks in it several times. Um, Dr. Carl Brogy, pastor of a community Bible church in Beaufort, South Carolina, which is a very large church, 3,000 members, and they're all homeschoolers. He actually homeschooled all five of his children who are now adults. And he speaks five times and really is a leading pastoral voice in that movie. Um, it's got stories, a lot of stories uh, about both homeschooling and campus Christian schooling. So it kind of promotes both equally, um, doesn't doesn't exclude one over the other, and it's all about getting kids out into a bona fide Christ centered Bible based Christian program. And let me see if I can give you a summary, very quick summary argument that it's making. And it is a little bit long. You can go online and view it, as I said, but it is divided into six segments of 20 minutes each. So a person could look at it over 6 days or 3 days. It's created for showing in churches and group settings. And we're really hoping pastors will do that. So here's my summary of the overall theme. We founded the American Republic, you know, and, say starting around the time of the Pilgrims, we founded the American Republic on the back of homeschooling and Christian campus schools. That was the model and the only model in America up until right before the Civil War. And we will not recover the American Republic. We know the nation is going down right now, and one of the primary reasons is public education. But we will not recover that until the churches and families go back to the biblical model, which was also comparable to the American model.
Now, Brother Moore, you have been involved in this fight for a long time to advocate for Christians removing their children from the government schools and giving them a definitively Christian education. And you've been involved in several different organizations that are part of that. One is Exodus Mandate, another is Public School Exit, and then another is the Christian Education Initiative. Could you give us kind of a rundown of what those organizations are
Yeah.
and maybe the differences between them?
I founded the Exodus Mandate Project about 30 years ago, give or take a year or two. And that website is exodusmandate.org, exodusmandate.org, and there's more information on there than you've got time for. But if you could go there, you could see actually a link to the movie that we're talking about now, Educated for Liberty. And then you'll see some other presentations, sermons, and things that we've created. Um, about 5 years ago, I was part of a group to found a new group on the West Coast called publicschoolexit.com. And I'm the board chairman. The CEO is Dran Reese from San Diego area. And she wanted something like Exodus Mandate, but I was 3,000 miles away, and she kind of wanted to have her a separate organization. I said, sure. I'd hope 100 people would do what Exodus Mandate's doing. So she started up with it and then asked me to be the board chairman. So I don't have to run it day to day, but I get on a call with her and her committee maybe twice a week for an hour, hour and a half, and a Zoom call like we're on right now. And we talk about plans and things that we're doing. and that's turned out to be quite significant. More money, more staff than X's mandate. In some ways, she's going beyond what I did with X's mandate, but I'm happy for that. And then about the same time, we created an alliance. It's a network of leaders, and you're part of that, and you're going to be speaking, one of our main speakers at the summit in Lynchburg, Virginia, September 11 and 12. I don't quite remember what day or what slot you have, but you're one of the, we got about 10, maybe 8 major speakers that are going to address different facets of Christian education. And you're one of our speakers of this year. Alex Newman was a speaker last year. Um, and so that website is christedu.org. Christedu.org. And it's an alliance of 30 organizations. We're not trying just to get everybody in. Um, it's a leaders meeting, and we have large, medium, and small ministries, but they have to be involved in some facet of K-12 Christian education or homeschooling. That's our agenda. And then we also now have put higher ed on our mission agenda and also Christian worldview. Now, we all are pro-life and we're all pro-marriage and not for the LGBTQ agenda, but we don't make that part of the agenda on the program. We're concentrating in our lane. And our view is if we don't fix this problem and get churches and pastors and Christians homeschooling and Christian education, we're going to lose not only the culture and the pagans, but we're going to lose the Christian children because we know that if you're an evangelical family and you public school your kids through their entire career, about 80% of those Christians leave the faith and abandon the church. So those are the 3 groups, christedu.org, and we've got a big event coming up in September in Lynchburg, Virginia, which is where our offices are, and then publicschoolexit.com. Does that answer you?
Yes, sir. So we want to pivot here and talk about some of this legislation that has been coming to various states. There are some groups that some of them even purport to be pro homeschooling organizations, but in reality, they're not. They're organizations that want to regulate homeschooling and introduce and invite government involvement, government control, government interference and regulation. But they're going to legislatures and they are trying to convince them to increase the regulations regarding home education. One of the notable states where this has recently happened is in the state of Connecticut, and it's moving to other states. And so we want to discuss this because we feel like this is a concern for everyone, regardless of what state they're in. This could be headed to your legislature next. So, Brother Ray, tell us about your thoughts and insights on this.
That these bills seem to have sprung up since January in blue states. The states that have had proposed legislation, Hawaii, New Jersey, Washington State, maybe. All of a sudden, I'm losing a couple of them. Maybe Illinois and West Virginia, strangely. But the state that has gone the farthest in a bad direction is the state of Connecticut, and they had a bill, and it's actually passed. It was signed into law by the governor Lamont on May 26th. So it is law now, and it will become effective July 1 of 2027. I don't know why they're taking that long, but it won't go into effect for a year. But it is on the books, and it is law. And the title of the law is an act concerning the provision of parent managed learning. and that is law now in the state of Connecticut, and it's very harmful a law. It's surprising how how bad it is. Um, apparently, people will have to go through child protection services to homeschool. You'll have to submit your curriculum to the state and see that it's approved. Um, there are other things in the law, and I'm sure people could look it up. It's actually the number is let me see, give you the I looked it up the other night. It's I think it's House Bill 5468 in Connecticut. And of all the different laws that have been proposed recently by the blue states, this is the worst one, and it could effectively uh, really shut down homeschooling. Or it's an attempt to do it. They don't say you can't homeschool. They just say you have to jump through so many hoops that it's practically impossible. And now we went through we and so what's happening nationally, we think there's a new trend to really impede, restrict, and try to thwart the exploding homeschool movement. Um, and I'm an early homeschooler, as you were as a child. We started in the 70s, my wife and I, and our kids are now 55, 49, 46, and 43. And they were homeschooled up through middle school, and then we tended to put them in a private Christian school at that point. But we've had 40 or 50 years with it as a family, and we've seen just a tremendous blessing it has been for our family. And so starting in 1997, we began to say, hey, everybody else ought to do the same thing. But so it's a homeschooling there was a lot of litigation against homeschooling in the 80s and 90s, and the fight to protect the rights of homeschoolers was led by the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. At that time, Michael Farris was the president and CEO, and they and other similar groups were successful in litigation and winning about 90% of the cases. And so we actually have relative freedom. It's more restricted and more regulated in some states, but it's pretty well able to be done in all 50 states. But some are more the states individually have their own laws, are more restrictive, but it's allowed. But these new laws are going to try to really shut it down.
Well, I'm going to ask you a leading question. Um, my view is that a lot of the new homeschooling families who are just coming into this really approach education from the standpoint of choice rather than the viewpoint of liberty. And I think that there is a lack among a lot of evangelical Christian families to really understand the proper limits of civil government and the role of the family in education. And so there's a bit of a worldview crisis that we're facing within the evangelical Christian church. And in my view, I think this leaves us vulnerable to government intrusion. Some of these even young Christian families are even open to the idea of co-parenting with the government. That's not an offensive idea to them. Can you comment on the need for Christian families to really have a biblical framework of thinking about these roles related to parental authority versus government control?
Well, we believe in a separation of school and state the same way we would believe in the proper a term of separation of church and state. Now, by that, I don't mean that God's law and Christian principles shouldn't impact government. And that's what the liberals or the left uses that term separation of church and state against us. But actually, it's a pretty good term because we separated the state and the church when we came across the water from England. And so the church, I mean, the government doesn't pay the salaries of our pastors. Um, they're not regulated. They don't tell us what to preach. They don't control our doctrine. About the only laws they have that would affect us is whether we clean our toilets in our churches and keep a cleanliness and we have safety. But they don't tell us anything about what to teach and preach. And the same should exist in education. And so we believe that the scripture and sound theology assign the education of children to the family with assistance from the church and not government. And if you're not a Christian, then, you know, it should be a private association. It shouldn't be regulated by the state. And this is a big fundamental fault line in how people should think about it. And because we take a strong stand, we are not in favor of the tax funded voucher for that very reason. And we've created this little pamphlet, and someone wants one, they can order it from exodusmandate.org. And we have it in a trifold. Uh, it's real short and sweet. And we also have the same thing in a 48-page booklet. And I think you have a chapter in that as well. So it's really important that people understand the arguments for the separation of school and state. Now, Ronald Reagan made an interesting comment. I think he made it on Johnny Carson years ago, but I love it. He said the 7 of the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you."
Mhm.
And so we don't think it's the government's role. And when if we start taking government funds, uh, in a decade or so, we'll all be public schools. We'll circle back around and become the thing that we fled. And so there's plenty of money in the church to fund education. Um, you know, our churches are using, you know, have quite a bit of revenues, and they put it in soup kitchens and old folks' homes and benevolence, but they should have benevolent attitude toward the children in their church and provide for them. There's 100,000 evangelical churches in America today, and if 25,000 of them or 15% would start Christian schools, they don't all have to do it. It would meet the need overnight. And I'm happy to report that that is improving now. There was a time when the pastors were some of the worst on getting this memo on homeschooling and Christian schooling. God sent a memo, and it's in his word, in his Bible. And I guess some people just hadn't been reading it, but now they're reading it, and a lot are improving.
So you've been watching this Christian education movement for a long time. I've been personally involved in it. You think back to the early 1980s when there was maybe a few thousand homeschoolers at the most. The most recent study that we have says that there are probably about 3.7 million homeschool students in the United States right now. And those are the ones that are being privately home educated, not public school at home, but 3.7 million. What are some of the things that, even though we see encroaching government control, we see some negative things on the horizon, the tempting of private schools and homeschoolers with government money, we see some negative things. What are some of the things that make you optimistic about the future, especially as it relates to this Christian education movement that you poured your life into?
Um, I think the growth is really it's quite incomprehensible. I've been doing this since well, we started homeschooling in '77. At that time, it wasn't about anybody else. It was just me and my kid, my wife, and our oldest son. That was all we were thinking about at the time. And but in '97, I launched the Exodus Mandate. That's exodusmandate.org for your audience, so they write that down. And we were kind of a seed organization for a lot of the other groups that are going on now. And there's so many dynamic, wonderful ministries that are doing similar to what we're doing. And so I think growth. Now, there's a big debate about how many children are being homeschooled, and Dr. Brian Ray, who I really respect with the National Home Education Research Institute, he's saying about 3 million plus. I'm hoping it's more than that, 4 or 5 million, but we'll debate on that. It's so fluid that it's hard to know how many are doing it, and it's growing quickly. There was a report in a group called the Learning Council, COUNSEL, and I think it's a secular group that studies trends in education. I don't know that they're even necessarily Christian. And last year, it was actually in 2024, so it's been more than a year. They predicted that in 2030, which is 4 years from now, that 30% of all children would be homeschooled. That's at the K-12 level. And 20% would be in private, parochial, or evangelical campus schools, with only 50% left in public schooling. Now, that is a prediction, and those things sometimes don't come to pass, but we see enormous growth in our movement. And it's almost like everybody's waking up at the same time and saying, we've got to get out of there. We got to get our kids out. I was watching Fox News as we were getting dressed to go to church Sunday morning, and they had a report. Fairfax County, Virginia, which is a real left wing county. Fox News says that they're talking about suspending any Christmas celebrations in the public schools. And I said, I hope they do. The worse it gets in public schools, the better it is. And but some Christians just stay there, and you just can't figure it out.
Yeah, they have a tenacious commitment to outsourcing their parenting of their children. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll outsource 7.5 hours of time in the middle of the day, and then they bring them home and outsource the rest to screens and TV and movies and video games. It just seems like
Yeah.
parents want anybody but themselves to be responsible for raising their children. And speaking of that, we have a need for fathers to not just dump this on the wives and mothers, but to really see their responsibility for being the leaders in their homes. And you've written a great book on that, one of my favorites, actually. Can you tell us about this book you wrote for dads?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was my wife and I co-authored it, and I'm married to a wordsmith. I mean, she's a professional writer for the South Carolina legislature, and very, very good. And her work there has to be really spot on because they're not allowed to make any mistakes. But we did this book together, and she wrote half the chapters, and then and edited it. And the title of it is "The Promise of Jonadab: Building a Christian Family Legacy in a Time of Cultural Decline." And if somebody's interested in it, they can go to my webpage at exodusmandate.org. And it's the very second item at the top of the webpage is me and my wife talking about the book, and they can order a copy. And if they order it online, and I believe I asking a $20 suggested donation, but if you can't afford that, just we'll give it to you at anything you can afford. But we'll send you an autographed copy, and it's called "The Promise of Jonadab: Building a Christian Family Legacy in a Time of Cultural Decline," which is what we're facing right now in our nation. So we did that book. It's really been over 10 years, and we did it together. And Gail, she wrote half the chapters, and I wrote half of them.
Well, I want to lend my personal endorsement to that book. It's one of my personal favorites. Really a great challenge for dads. It'd be a great gift to give to husband or father for Father's Day or his birthday or whatever. Whenever you happen to hear this, upcoming Christmas or whatever, get this for the dad in your life and encourage him to read this because I think it'll really inspire
Yeah.
and challenge him.
Yeah, the
We are
character
out of
made
time.
yeah
Oh, go ahead,
the
brother.
oh the character made such an impression on me and Gail. We say he's come to live with us. And
Yeah,
it's
people
been
will.
translated. It was translated into Mandarin some years ago, and it was selling briskly in China until last year when the government has cracked down on churches and Christian publishing. I'm working on a Polish version and a Spanish version.
Well, you have been a blessing to the Christian community. We are out of time for this particular interview, but I am grateful for your service for all these years and your leadership. You have been a part of so many projects and efforts that I've been blessed to be a part of. I'm excited about speaking this year at the Christian Education Initiative there in September in Virginia. For anybody who's involved in Christian education who wants to get involved with that, just go to christedu.org. Again, exodusmandate.org and then publicschoolexit.com. And then make sure that you check out that film, Educated for Liberty. And you can find that again at exodusmandate.org. And then, you can learn how you can maybe get to show that for like your church or small group and help people to think through this issue of how they can disentangle from the government school system and to, as Brother Ray would say, enter the promised land of Christian education, getting our children out of Pharaoh's schools and into the promised land of Christian education. So, Brother Ray, thank you for everything you do. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you for all you're doing. You're really a bright spot in our movement. We're so happy about so many young men and young women leaders that are coming along.
All right. Well, we will have you back on again and we'll talk again soon. Thank you, brother.
Thank you.